FAVMI presents Unfolding Mental Illness, hosted by Saraswati Suresh.
Hello everyone. FAVMI presents Unfolding Mental Illness with its 16th episode. I am Saraswati Suresh, the host and founder of FAVMI, Family's Voice on Mental Illness, which is also the Mumbai Regional Zone of Families Alliance on Mental Illness, founded by Dr. Nirmala Srinivasan. My co-host is Dr. Sachin Ganorkar, the founder member and director of FAVMI. With our episodes, we hope to reach more and more family carers looking after their loved ones suffering with some kind of mental health disorder and help them with tools, insights, and resources by conversing with mental health professions, lived experience, etc. Today's episode is a little different, and we decided to take a closer look at a deeply personal and transformative journey of a family carer. And our topic is Journey of a Family Carer to a Person with Mental Illness. Caregiving is often described as a role with love, challenges, and resilience. And for those caring for someone with a mental illness, this role goes beyond physical support. It involves navigating emotional complexities, stigma, financial dependence, etc. In this episode, we'll hear firsthand about the triumphs, the struggles, and the profound lessons learned along the way. Through this conversation, we aim to provide hope, understanding, and solidarity to family carers and families everywhere. Let's dive into the journey of a family carer, a story of love, strength, and unwavering dedication. Our guest for this episode is Mr. Aman Batish. Aman is a family carer to his loved one. He is an architect by profession, an alumni from IIT Roorkee. He is also an educator and academician for the last 4 years. He is part of the State Mental Health Authority of Haryana and is the co-founder of NGO Manas Mitra, which is working to help and support family carers of persons with mental illness in resolving their common problems related to caregiving. Welcome, Aman, and we are very, very grateful to you for agreeing to do this conversation with us.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my pleasure, and I would really, look forward to have a meaningful session and conversation, and I hope it is beneficial, for all the peers that are associated and listening to us. I hope I'm in some way meaningfully able to help them in some way.
Yeah, I'm sure. So Aman, let's start with understanding. If you could give a little snapshot of your journey as a family carer to us.
Yeah.
To set the conversation going, let's begin with that.
Right. So our family's brush with mental illness, it started a long time back. I think I must have been in class 8 or 9 when my mother first, started showing signs that all was not right with her. And by the time I was in class 10, she had a full-blown episode. And prior to that, we, living in a small town, and I'm talking about, somewhere around 90s, early 90s, I guess. At that time, mental illness was not something that, everybody was very aware of. And even though ours was a relatively educated family, my father was a scientist, and he was one of the leading scientists in his domain in India. He retired as head of the Department of Microbiology from National Dairy Research Institute at Karnal. Nevertheless, I mean, in spite of our relatively, educated background, still there was, lack of awareness about mental illness. And, in small cities like ours at that time, a psychiatrist would be synonymous with pagalon ka doctor, and anybody with mental illness, any sort of mental illness would be bracketed as a pagal or something like that. That was the general mindset during those days. So there was a lot of stigma also, and initially, to be very honest, we didn't even realize ourselves, what kind of problem she was actually facing, because she was also not able to very clearly tell us what exactly she was going through, and we also had to do a lot of guesswork about what could be happening to her. And so initially we just took her to physicians and tried to figure out, got her tests done, what was wrong. And it was only much later, I think when I was in class 10, when she had a full blown episode, that we realized that it is something more than just physical ailment. And that is when we started to look at the mental illness aspect, and we took her to PGI Chandigarh, and her treatment started. So I've been involved with the treatment of my mother, right from the beginning. And when I was in class 10, the episode she had was quite severe, and a lot of things happened quite publicly, and it was kind of very unsettling for us. And also because of the social scenario, it was also quite embarrassing, to be honest. And it was very difficult, but thankfully, somehow by God's grace, I could still keep my focus. And my board exams were quite near when her admission to the PGI Chandigarh happened. And with mental illnesses, it is usually long admissions. And of course, thankfully, we also had family support in Chandigarh. My father's side family, quite a few relatives were there, and we could manage somehow, logistically and otherwise. But nevertheless, our treatment started, and side by side, I was preparing for my board exams, and thankfully, I could go through with the board exams with good marks. And uh, mummy responded well to the treatment at PGI. They also had a good track record, we've seen, and the success rate was fairly high. And after her admission, she became fairly stable, and with medication, gradually she started improving. Thereafter, I had been preparing for my competitive exams, and then after class 12, I got admission in IIT Roorkee. I went there for my uh, undergraduate degree. And during the while, also my mother's treatment was continuing with PGI Chandigarh, and she had to go for regular follow-ups. And my father would often have to, because of the nature of his work was such, for some projects or something, he might be, you know, he would have to go away at times. He also had to go abroad for some time. So I would accompany my mother for the follow-ups. I would come from my college, take my mother along, and all that continued. But then thereafter, things started stabilizing, and I thought that the worst was over, and probably there are better things to look forward to from life. I was about to finish my graduation. But then, unfortunately, my sister also started showing some, signs of erratic behavior. And that is what we thought initially. I mean, I never really thought that, another member in the family would also have. That was the last thought I had in my mind, and that logic in my mind would go, keep, what is the probability of having two accidents in a day for a person? So probably the worst is over, and she's probably, my sister is just having teenagers ka time wo tha, she was in her teens. So we thought it was just teenagers are cranky, and they have their behavioral issues, and it will pass away. But I think, and we also had that thought in mind that some my father would also be away at times, and I was also away for my graduation. So my sister was there alone with my mother. So probably that was also taking an emotional toll on her. And when I would come back after the graduation, probably things will start getting better. But unfortunately, I mean, it was destined to be something else. And she also eventually, we figured out that she also was developing similar kind of uh, symptoms. And in 2003, after I came back uh, from my college, I graduated in 2001. um, Her condition started to worsen, and in 2003 she also had a full-blown episode again. Somehow things just got out of hand, and things happened very publicly again. And it was again quite difficult, and that was a very unsettling period for me again. And emotionally speaking, it took a heavy toll. And I almost, like, lost faith, and uh, went through the phase when you say, how could this happen? And why again? And why our family? All those sort of things. But then eventually, but still we had hope, because in my mother's case, she had responded well to the treatment. And being uh, again, our educational background was such, we were also always looking at scientific developments, and we had faith in the system of medicine. And we had also seen good results in case of my mother. So we were quite hopeful that things will work out fine, and she would uh, start getting better with treatment. And we again took her to PGI Chandigarh. And uh, the same doctor who was treating my mother, he started looking after her. Initially, she was put on olanzapine, and she responded well to the treatment, and she started getting better also. But there was a lot of weight gain happening because of the medicine. And she had started doing her graduation also side by side on the educational front. And she was becoming quite concerned about her weight gain. So we asked the doctors, and they also agreed that she's better. So they started tapering off the medicines. But as soon as the medicine was, that process started, she relapsed. And unfortunately, in her case, she's had frequent relapses, um, many times. We tried, almost all the available medicines, and different combinations were tried, but somehow or the other, she would have relapses somehow. And there were periods of stability, and she had even started doing a job as an insurance advisor, um, in a private firm uh, in Karnal only. But nevertheless, she was, she finished her graduation, and she managed to do that. But nevertheless, all said and done, uh, episodes would generally follow periods of stability for her. So mm, it was never really like a substantial recovery as in case of my mother. And mm, the story, our family story, when I look back retrospectively, I would say there are so many things, which uh, I would cite as examples of what not to do, rather than what we can do actually. Because in spite of the our family background and everything, um, it was it was a struggle always for us. And coping with whatever was going around, specifically uh, because of the nature of the symptoms that she manifested, they were quite socially awkward, and we had to face a lot of um, stigma, and um, backlash from the society as well. Her symptoms were such that our neighbors sometimes would object, and sometimes they had, in one instance, one of them even threatened that they would all talk together and make us move out from the place. And given the our social status and our background, it was quite difficult for us to deal with that kind of a situation. And so eventually we had to, sell our house and move away to a different location where we, could find, a better situation, more, a more understanding environment, a better support system, right? So there was also a lot of societal pressure and family pressure on us that probably, we should try to get her married, and maybe things will start getting better if she goes to a different family, and there'll be a change for her and probably some responsibility, even though, being being educated people, we knew that, it would not work, and probably we had discussed it openly with our psychiatrist also, and he had advised us against it very categorically. But nevertheless, because of the familial pressure, and also fortunately, one of my sister's friends was had a liking for her, and irrespective of her illness, he was ready to get married to her. And also probably, they were not very well off also, so it was also some kind of a support mechanism where we could mutually benefit from each other, where we could, financially support their family, and they could provide support to our sister, my sister, and our family that ways. That sort of an arrangement we could, try to make. I'm discussing all this very openly because, as an example of, again, what not to do, right? So we knew that, she was not probably in a situation, but nevertheless, because of societal pressure, we uh, decided to go ahead with it. Also because of the fact that the boy was known and he knew about her illness, and in spite of that, for whatever, multiple reasons, he and his family agreed to, accept uh, the wedding. And so in 2013, my sister got married, and but again, as anticipated, we knew within our hearts that, it would be difficult for her, and uh, that is what happened also. I mean, eventually she could not really cope up. Initially she was very happy, and and it was a change, but that was it. So after that, that change and the new family environment and everything had settled down, she found it difficult to live with them. And uh, her longest period of stay at her in-laws place was, I think, 15 days or 20 days, every now and then. But it helped that, the boy was from a nearby city, neighboring city. So he was also, supportive, and he would come and live with her at her place, for some periods. But eventually it didn't really work out. She again would relapse into severe episodes, and then um, we also, in the meanwhile, some differences of opinion happened with the psychiatrist at PGI Chandigarh, and she was also taken to State Institute of Mental Health at Rohtak. And then after her marriage, her treatment was continuing from IBAS Delhi in Shadra. So thereafter, things became more complicated, and during her treatment, she had never been compliant, and she had never been, you know, in favor of taking medicines. She would generally not have trust on us, typical symptoms of schizophrenia, and um, she did not want to continue her treatment at IBAS Delhi. And while we were on a parole to visit our house, she had been given a parole to come to spend some time at home. She did not want to go back, and one night, just before we were supposed to go back to IBAS, she jumped from the second floor of our, of our flat, with the hope that she would escape. I mean, she was not suicidal or anything, but she was just delusional, and she thought that she could escape. And She hurt her spine, and thereafter her mobility also got affected. So along with the psychiatric treatment, other things also happened. Then physical, you know, issues. Her mobility got affected very severely, and we could see that there was no point in continuing with the marriage also, even from the boy's perspective now, because there were no prospects of having a family with her in any case. And uh, we did not want to spoil his life as well. And even though he was still like ki bhai, you know even though he he was in a dilemma himself, actually. Part of him would say that he should probably continue, and but he could not cope, and we could see that happening. So ultimately we decided that mutually we should, for the benefit of everybody, we should he should move on with his life, and get married, probably have a family at least. And there's no point in getting stuck with her. So all those proceedings started, and she eventually got divorced in 2017. And it was a period of turmoil in our lives, and you know personally, professionally, everything. But at the same time, by God's grace, and um, you know I've been blessed with a lot of good things also. Support systems, support staff. Support system was good in my case, and I'm really thankful to God for that, because that provided a lot of respite at times when it was needed. My and the firm with which I was working, my immediate senior, my colleague, they were very supportive. During her treatment, she would require long admissions, and I was given the permission to work from the hospital. When I was accompanying her, ek mahina I would stay there in the hospital and work from there. So that on the work front, that ways I found a lot of support. And then I myself got married in the year 2007. And my wife, she's a medico, and she has been very supportive, um, and always been stood by me. So that ways, there were lots of ups and downs. And the point that I'm trying to make here by sharing this is, I've seen, interacted with a lot of people, and many times people ask this question about marriage and prospects, and how things would work out. So from my personal experience, been there, done that, I can say now this with we already knew in our hearts that it would probably not work. The psychiatrist had advised us not to do it, and yet out of family pressure and out of societal pressures, we decided to go ahead with it. But end of the day, it was us who were the sufferers, and there's no point in uh, you know going ahead with such things. I mean, each case is different, वैसे. I mean, you can't generalize. What I'm saying is not generically applicable to every case, but nevertheless, for whoever it is beneficial, if you know that in your hearts that it will probably not work out, and your loved ones, their personality traits and what their capabilities are, there is no point in falling in the trap of familial pressures and societal pressures, specifically because end of the day it is you who are going to be affected. And no matter how well meaning your relatives or your friends are, they cannot stand with you through each and everything, and you have to be ultimately on your own. So primarily it is you, and with the counseling and help of your of mental health care professionals, psychiatrists or psychologists, you should as a team be making decisions about these kind of things, and not fall trap to you know into the trap of familial pressure. So that has generally been the story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Of course, there are a lot many other things. Professionally speaking, I was going through a lot too. Uh, I think we could,
Yeah.
take it up
Let's,
more.
yeah. Thank you so much, Aman, for sharing your story. I'm sure it's not easy to even talk about it. And the fact you are taking courage to tell the world, kudos to you. And also, I can understand, you know, seeing your mother, from a child, I'm sure the journey, the emotional trauma that you have gone through, and then again back your sister and being there for her, I think you need a big hug and a big pat on your back to you and your wife also for being there with you.
Yeah.
It's I can understand what you have gone through. Yeah,
Thank you so much. And I hope people will, maybe
yeah,
relate and,
true.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
But
sorry,
yeah,
continue.
नहीं आप
The
बताइए.
fact that you being there for your family, I think I think that is the biggest uh, you know I don't know how to word it, but being there for one another, being there, and even today you are being there for them and taking care of them. I think it's a big job, and it's not an easy job, and you're doing it. Big round of applause to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, it's not an easy job. You're rightly saying it, and there have been a lot of learnings, and and I'm also grateful for some very useful and meaningful life lessons that I've gained out of this experience. And another aspect that I would like to address is, I have also heard about many people talking about when they go for matrimonial alliances, for example, of the siblings in
Mm.
their families, whether to people have specifically asked me about this issue, so I'm
Yeah,
wanting to address this issue as well,
sure,
that
sure.
whether we should reveal about or openly and honestly discuss about mental health problems in the family with the prospective partners, or with the um, families of the matrimonial alliances, right? So, see, in my case, mm, I had been very open and honest about the history of mental illness in my family with my wife.
Mm.
And it helped that she happens to be my classmate from school, even though it was an arranged marriage. And I never could really have the uh, intention. I mean, I never wanted to hide. I wanted
Yeah,
to start this relationship with honesty. And at the very first meeting, I told my wife, prospective wife, about the history of mental illness in our family. And my mother and my sister both having, and in spite of the fact that people had been cautioning me about it, that people will take it very adversely, and especially two females in the family having mental illness is something, but I never wanted to be dishonest and hide something so important from a person who is going to share my life and my home with me.
yeah.
uh, and somehow by crook, you know uh, getting her
I think
into a situation.
it's your good intention which worked with you, I would say.
Yeah. So I mean, my wife was appreciative. She still says that one of the reasons why I decided to marry you was that you never hid anything from me, and you were very open about it. And she's been very supportive, very kind. Of course, it's a different thing. She's a medico and she has an understanding of the issues, but nevertheless, having a knowledge about something and living it are two different things.
Yeah,
Many times I've heard people say that doctors are not good patients. My wife herself says that they are very cranky. So to know about something is one thing, and having to live it
yeah. Is a
is
different.
something entirely different.
Yeah.
So that ways, I'm really grateful to God that this person is there in my life who's a pillar of support. And we made a lot of decisions in our life, gradually, where without her support, I would not have been able to take those decisions in my life. I decided to switch to academics because my profession, architecture, is a very demanding profession in terms of time and availability, and it is very unpredictable also because people's money is at stake and they expect you to be on site whenever there is an issue and to resolve the issues. So my family situation was also unpredictable, I would say. Many a times I didn't know when anything would spring up, and it would need attention and I would have to devote time to it. So I decided to switch to and we discussed at home that family situation is not likely to change. The only thing that we can change is ourselves and our other aspects which are more in hand and manageable. So I decided to gradually switch over to academics because uh, 2013-14, when my sister got married, I was at the peak of my professional career as far as architectural consultancy is concerned. Work was all spread out. I had projects in northeast and Odisha, Meghalaya, Arunachal, all far off places. And I would be traveling half of the week. I would be to sites, and it was taking its own toll on me. And being having unpredictable situation on the family front as well as on the professional front was taking it was becoming too challenging and demanding. So
I
I
understand completely.
to handle.
So, I mean,
So
a lot of insights, Aman, you have given us today. One is of the family support and, honesty in which you have taken forward your relationship, and
yeah.
about the matrimonial aspect. And, also looking out for solutions when you know that situations are not going to change.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
looking for all, rather than just cribbing about it, you looked at alternatives and, took forward your life.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
I think that's beautiful learnings, Aman, you have given today. Just wanted to take this conversation further. Is that you mentioned about that, though you all came from an educated family,
Yeah.
that accepting the disease at the initial stages was not something you all also rattled with. So
Yes.
how did the change happen of accept, because I see this in many families also, acceptance of the disease of your loved one is the biggest challenge one faces. So how did you all go about doing that?
Again, it was like we learned the hard way actually,
Mm.
because as I mentioned earlier, the nature of the symptoms that my sister's disease manifested
Mhm.
was such that many a times we had to become harsh with her, and mm, it affected especially my relationship because many a times my father would be busy with his work. I was there with her in the hospital for her treatment. My father would come on weekends, I would stay there for the week. Those kind of arrangements, and there were times when I was the one who had to take the hard decisions. And I was pretty young at that time. I did not know how to deal with it. And uh, many a times the most obvious reaction, not response, because I did not know at that time how to respond to it, so I just reacted. And the first thing would be, first instantaneous instinctive response would be to make her stop doing whatever she was doing, by whatever means. you know so that would often lead to fights and arguments, and it proved to be very counterproductive for my relation with my sister. She would I became um, the bad guy in her life.
Yeah, the villain.
Yeah, the villain of her life. So in spite of all the good intentions, I did all the wrong things. in the initial stages. And it was only very late when the reality dawned on me that I we are trying to change her to fit into our standards,
Yes.
and it is not working. So probably the better thing to do would be to change ourselves and to uh, you know deal with it in a more empathetic manner, in a more objective way, rather than reacting emotionally all the time. But it was all, it's easier said than done, and
I
it is
agree.
not easy to change yourself. Gradually you become so conditioned to the way you are, it becomes your second nature, right? And we don't realize it, how deep that conditioning goes, until we try to change ourselves, right? And for me, spiritual understanding and spirituality, I think that did the job. That helped me a lot to it actually gave me answers. I'm a practicing Hare Krishna devotee too, and initiated disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj. And uh, I learned a lot from him, and a deeper understanding of the Bhagavad Gita gave me answers about why is it so difficult to change ourselves.
Hmm.
So when I got those answers from there, that is when transformation started. And even though it was a very slow and gradual and painful process, I would say, nevertheless, I would say that I am today where I am because of that decision to you know follow this path of spiritual and realization, and understanding the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, and our other we follow the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, are following our philosophy more deeply, understanding it. you know that has helped in the transformation quite a lot. And to be very honest, this was something that I had put in the back seat initially, because again of my sister's illness only. Because in her initial phases, she would show very extreme kind of behaviors. Sometimes she would become absolutely atheistic. She would start destroying the idols and the deities kept in our home temple. Sometimes she would become extremely religious. She would fast for days and do austerities and those kind of things. And even though I had been associated with my Guru Maharaj since 2000, I mean around 2000, when I was still doing my graduation from IIT Roorkee. So my Maharaji, his ashram is in Rishikesh. So we would go there. I had gotten in touch with him while I was doing my graduation. But because of my sister's symptoms, I thought probably it would be better if I stop going there
Hmm.
and not follow this path, because you know she इसका तो कुछ नहीं पता है. She follows me and I take her along, and ये तो कहे कि मुझे तो यहीं रुकना है, I
हाँ.
won't go back. Then I mean my whole family would be after me, कि तू इसको वहां ले गया था and she's not coming back, and those sort of things. So uh, and at that time also, I was also just a novice. I didn't know much about this at all myself. So I thought it would be wiser for me to take a step back, not go there, and you know things of that sort. But then later on I realized that you know I am making my sister's condition, or my sister rather, a stumbling block for my own spiritual progress, my own, personal, professional progress. I did not realize it, but gradually, there was a time when everything in my life was somehow or the other, linked to or centered around what my sister was going through, and all those sort of things. And even though I did not realize it, consciously, subconsciously it was taking a toll on me, and it was affecting, you know, it was being detrimental, I would say, to the whole situation and becoming very counterproductive. uh, Not only for me personally, professionally, socially, but also for the very relationship for which I was trying to be helpful, right? So that is when the realization gradually dawned on me that probably I should move ahead and not you know make her into a stumbling block for my development, rather use it as an opportunity for gradually progressing. And that is the point from where transformation for me started to happen. Of course, it was not an overnight process. It took a lot of time, a lot of, again, like I said, you become conditioned, so it is very difficult to break that conditioning. Even though you may decide and you may see very clearly that you are again reacting the same way, but somehow you don't seem to have control over it. You still react the same way, the way you have been doing it, right? So I finally got the answers how to break this, cycle of action and reaction.
So I think a beautiful message, to families, that bringing the change within oneself,
Yes.
responding to the situation rather than reacting.
Yes.
And most of the times, we try to victimize, ourselves
Ourselves. Yes.
and create that stumbling block, like what you said, rather than looking at every challenge as an opportunity. I
Absolutely.
think you've, and of course, self care. I think every person finds a different way in which, in your case, you have taken spirituality as a methodology for self care.
Yes.
In fact, you have answered my quite a few of my other questions where I was going to ask you, like, what are your positives learning from the journey or challenges? I think you have combined all of them and answered most of our questions. But in spite of that, is there anything else, any other positives or challenges you think you would like to share a little more?
Yeah. There are quite a few positives as well. And I mean, see, the first thing is, after this, you were talking earlier, about acceptance and how did that come about and how did it affect. So I would like to, very pointedly come and say that, practically speaking, what does acceptance mean in one's life?
Hmm.
you know for us, the transformation manifested as, earlier our approach was, and somehow, the hope within us, it would never let us uh, stop trying to get her treated. you know the objective somehow of medicines and whatever therapies that we did, ultimately somehow subconsciously, was always, you know in the hope that she would get cured, right? And that inadvertently was putting us under a lot of, unwanted pressure, in the sense that, it was, again, like I said, uh, we all have, our own definitions of um, what is a normal person, right? For example, how would a normal person behave? And we expect our PMIs to, somehow conform to those ideas and those standards of what a normal person is, right? Whereas even in, so-called normal persons, everybody is a different personality. So everybody, for somebody, something is normal, and for another person, something else would be, what he would define as normal, right? But somehow or the other, in our pursuit of, getting her cured, we were putting ourselves under undue pressure of, making her somehow get up to the standard of our definition of what a normal person should be like, right? And the point of acceptance, and the transformation that happened after that acceptance happened, was that now we have consciously, shifted our focus on, expecting her to become cured and get treated, to, management, right? So we are more concerned now that whatever her benchmark of manageability we have been able to achieve, we should be able to sustain that level of manageability. So our focus has now shifted from treatment to management, and that has eased our lives quite a bit. Our lives and also their lives. And the biggest learning from spirituality as well as this experience for me has been learning to let go. You know, we tend to micro control every aspects of our lives and also the people who are there in our lives, right? And that controlling or dominating tendency is very counterproductive. It is very unhealthy. It is very detrimental to relationships, interpersonal relationships. It is not just, I mean, not just in the case of PMIs. Otherwise, also generally speaking, we generally have this tendency to control every aspect of our lives. We want everything to go as per our plans. We want we get frustrated and agitated if things don't go the way we planned. And in that process, we transfer our frustrations and our negativity to everybody around us, right?
true.
And especially in cases of PMI families, this is something which people need to avoid,
Yeah.
because this is something which is counterproductive, and it adversely affects the very purpose of what you are doing everything for. The ultimate objective, I'm sure, of all caregivers is the well-being and the happiness of their loved ones, right? And this is something which is absolutely antithetical to uh, that very objective, right? So learning to let go and not forcing your loved ones to rise up to the standards of for example, your standards of what cleanliness is, what your standards of what hygiene is, your standards of what a good looking house is or a well maintained house is, right? All these little trivial so called aspects of life which we don't even bother about at times or don't even give a thought to about, but nevertheless all these little things do make a difference, right? So over the period of time, mm, my father, he passed away in 2022. um, I've experienced this even more after he passed away. you know Now, my mother and my sister, uh, me and my wife, we all live in the same compound. My mother and my sister are living in a separate accommodation. And me, my wife, my mother-in-law, and my son, we are living in the same compound in a different accommodation, separate accommodation. So everybody, all of us have our own
Independent.
space, independent space. And you know I have shifted from actively intervening in every aspect of their life to becoming a more passive supporter, right? So instead of being an active instead of being actively involved in their in every aspect of their day-to-day lives, I am now just in a supporting role. And believe you me, ever since we've started doing this, the situations have they've literally turned 180 degrees around, right? Because now they don't have the pressure to you know conform to my standards,
Yes.
right? So they can live peacefully the way they want to. अगर उनको घर थोड़ा सा गंदा भी है और उनको चल रहा है, it is okay. I don't push them now to इसको साफ कराओ, मेड आ रही है उससे क्यों नहीं करा रहे हो. अच्छा, my sister is she is still very temperamental, and there would be times when she would not let the maid work. Initially when I was living with them, it would inadvertently lead to a fight. Why don't you let her work? Why don't you let her work? Now I say, okay, if you don't want to get it done, you want her to go, let her go. 2 दिन सफाई नहीं होगा, it's okay. I mean, as long as it is not something life threatening or
Yes.
something which would be extremely outrageously dangerous for them or for others, I don't really push them to do anything. just
Very beautiful. I think so many insights. I just can't, keep. I would love to listen to your conversation again and again, because you have given a new meaning to acceptance. Acceptance is not only about the disease, but it's also
yeah,
about the person, the way they live,
yes,
and the way you are going to interact with them. It's every aspect of acceptance,
right.
and I think it's very beautifully giving that supporting role, creating that environment which is more supportive to them. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's an amazing conversation we are having, Aman. And to take this forward, uh, so, did you ever think that you'd like to? We all want our families, loved ones, to be independent. So, what were your thoughts on that? Is your sister independent, or she's financially dependent on you? How does it? How is it?
Um, See, like I mentioned earlier, she had done her graduation alongside, even though she was having repeated episodes,
Mhm.
and her illness had become, it is chronic, I would say. She would keep having episodes on a regular, you know intervals, even though, gradually, thankfully, by God's grace, um, as I've mentioned, with all these, basically, changing ourselves has transformed the situation altogether. Her period of stability has been, she's been fairly stable. And then also, thankfully, uh, my mother has also come and played a very supportive and very constructive role now. After the demise of my father, she has taken up that responsibility. And initially, she was not very, supportive herself about medication, even though she had benefited from medicines herself. But in her case, she would often, whenever she would complain about her medicines, and she would kind of support her. But gradually, then she realized that stopping medication uh, is not doesn't work in her case. And on the other hand, it adversely affects her condition, and it becomes even more unmanageable for us. So she has been very supportive now about her medication. So at present, earlier I said that she had completed her graduation, and thereafter she was also working for some time as an insurance advisor. So she had done some policies for which she keeps getting commissions now, and she has her own account, and it keeps coming to her. Uh, but after that incident, when she jumped from our home, and she, uh, fractured her spine, her mobility has been badly affected, and she is restricted to home at the moment. So, from a financial point of view, she is not that independent. She is dependent, on us. But otherwise, she's independent enough to do her, daily chores, and she does whatever she wants to, and whatever she is capable of doing. She has, often tried to uh, do get into higher education and do some other, courses as well. But her condition is such, she is not able to maintain her focus for long durations, and um, she somehow, just doesn't find, enough motivation to finish things up. So she would start, she's enrolled in several courses with the IGNU, for example, but she would not finish it, leave it in the middle. Initially, I was also, very cranky about it. I would crib about it, कि तू admission ले लेती है, फिर पूरा नहीं करती है, and all that stuff. But now, I'm at peace even with that. I say, okay, you want to do it, you try. If you succeed, it is fine. If you don't, let it be, right? So that ways, whenever she says that she wants to do this, we ensure that we support her to the extent that it is possible and feasible for us, without unduly, affecting our personal and other, aspects of our life also. And at the same time, she also doesn't feel that, we don't listen to her, and we don't give importance to her ideas or to her thoughts, right? So if she wants to do something, if, for example, she sometimes wants to visit her old colleagues in some office, so I would, initially hesitate, because it is very difficult to, take her because of her mobility issues. And sometimes, unfortunately in India, most of the buildings, I'm an architect, I know about it. Most of the buildings in India are not, they are not accessible to, people with disabilities. So it's a big issue. And her office would be on the second floor, and she would still, want me to take her up there. And, you know, uh, she would not have the insight that she would not be able to go there and, come back probably. Um, Nevertheless, when she's motivated enough, she somehow pushes herself, and she does it. So there were times, when when she asked me to take her to her office, and I would take her. Gradually she herself realized that, it is so difficult to, if there is no lift in the office, and it is so difficult to go about. So we try to support her and let her do things as independently as she can, given her constraints. But at the same time, she is not financially that independent. So but we have, mechanisms in place where, her expenses and everything are taken care of. And ठीक है, मतलब
No,
it's
that's
okay.
another acceptance of another kind. I
Yeah,
think families also, try to set expectations from our PMI, ye karna chahiye, wo
वो
karna,
करना चाहिए. Right, right.
and I think we also have to understand what is possible and what is not
Not
possible.
possible. Right.
And I think that acceptance also,
Hmm.
very beautifully you have imbibed it in your family with your sister. So I think it's a lovely message to our families also. That was part one of our conversation with Aman Batish, and we shall continue our conversation in the next episode, where we talk about his role in the State Mental Health Authority of Haryana.